Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Comparing Solar Quotes webinar. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Abby Jager. I'm a program manager with Solar Oregon. This is a recurring workshop that Solar Oregon has been delivering to home and business owners across our state for years, and we work to provide you as a consumer with the information you need to make good informed choices as you explore solar and/or battery storage. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, we'll build on the basics of how to go solar and focus on how to read and compare different solar quotes. We'll start by taking a look at the fundamentals of a solar system and how you can expect to see these represented on a quote. Next, we'll take a look at the different elements of a quote and what details to look out for. After that, we'll walk through an example quote to see what it all looks like in practice, and we'll wrap up by talking about solar contractor selection if you have not already reached out and received some quotes. We're here to get your questions answered, so we'll have a Q&A session after the presentation. If throughout the presentation you have any questions, feel free to put them in to the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen, or it's usually on the bottom. Your computer might have different settings. You can see that highlighted in the orange box here. You can put your questions into that box at any time, and I will be going through them all at the end of this presentation, but you do not need to wait for the end of the presentation to put them into the Q&A box. Additionally, I'm going to go ahead and launch some polls while we go through some other housekeeping items. This just allows us to know who is in the room with us today and gives us some demographic information, which is really helpful when we apply for grants or other sources of funding. These are completely optional, but as I said, they are particularly helpful. So as I said, I'm from the nonprofit Solar Oregon. Solar Oregon is a 501c3 nonprofit that has worked to encourage solar and storage adoption throughout Oregon since 1979. We do this by providing reliable and impartial consumer education like this workshop, working to build clean energy community and performing outreach and some policy advocacy. We also facilitate solar tours, zero energy showcases, and expert panel discussions on a range of topics related to solar, and you do a lot of really great work. Thank you for filling out that poll. I'm going to go ahead and launch the end that one and launch the last one now. And at the same time, I'm going to put some links in the chat. These are just some general informative links that I will reference throughout the presentation and that you're also welcome to save to reference later as well. This workshop is supported by Energy Trust of Oregon. Energy Trust is an independent nonprofit established in 2002 that provides resources to help enable customers of the investor-owned utilities of our state to use energy efficiently and gain access to renewable energy. They offer key incentives for solar installation and battery storage. Energy Trust coordinates a network of trade ally contractors who are able to offer these incentives, and I will be talking more about that later in the presentation. For now, I'm just going to say thank you, Energy Trust, for all your support. And I'm going to go ahead and end that last poll. Thank you so much for filling those out. Like I said, it just is helpful for us to have some more demographic data about who is engaging with our content. If you haven't already connected with a solar contractor to get quotes, there's an extremely convenient and easy tool on Energy Trust website and linked in the chat that you can use to request free custom bids from highly ranked trade ally contractors in your area. This online form takes only 3 to 5 minutes to complete, and you can make sure you're getting connected with solar trade ally contractors that can best serve your solar and storage needs. Energy Trust trade ally contractors have been rigorously vetted, highly rated, and are the only contractors who can offer you Energy Trust solar and storage incentives, which saves you money, and that's something we all need right now. We highly recommend working with a trade ally contractor and getting at least 3 quotes to compare if you're able. So now with all that out of the way, let's jump into our main presentation. We're going to start by reviewing system components. If you'd like a deeper dive into some of the items I'm going to cover briefly here, you should consider joining our next How to Go Solar and Storage workshop. So this is a diagram of a typical home solar system. You can see the house in the middle of the diagram and the photovoltaic or PV panels on the left. Photovoltaic is the proper name for a solar panel, and when sunlight strikes the PV panel, it generates a volt of electricity. However, the electricity generated is a special type of electricity called direct current or DC electricity. This is different than the AC or alternating current electricity used by your home. So, in order to make it a usable form of electricity for your home, it flows from the photovoltaic panel to an inverter or microinverter, which converts it to DC electricity. From there, then flows into your home electric panel to power your lights, charge your computer, charge an electric vehicle, and do everything you require electricity for. If at any point in time your solar system is generating more power than you need, any excess power you're generating flows out to the utility grid to be used by your friends and neighbors and is tracked through the fancy bidirectional utility meter that you would get installed with your solar system. A bidirectional utility meter is able to track both the energy that you are exporting to the grid and the energy you are importing from the grid to your home. So, such as at night when the sun is not shining and yet you still need power. So, your solar panels are not producing much, if any, solar power at all. You would be drawing power from the utility grid, and that is being tracked by your bidirectional utility meter, just as your utility meter now tracks all the electricity. Um, when So that's a solar system in a nutshell. It's pretty simple. There's not that many components, and that's one of the reasons why solar is so low maintenance. When your solar system produces more electricity than you use, like I said, the extra is sent out to the grid to be used by your friends or neighbors. Net metering is the process we have here in Oregon that helps you gain credit and offset your electricity bill through this process. In order to explain how this works, I'm going to walk through two examples. First, looking at a typical sunny summer month. In summer, you typically produce more electricity than you use. This orange bar shows you your solar production. So if we're imagining a very sunny day, kind of like today was here in Oregon with our first faux spring day we had of the year, you're producing a ton of electricity, and yet your consumption, shown by the blue bar, is only about half of your usage. So you're earning credits for that entire green bar difference between those two bars. That's the amount of electricity you are exporting to the grid and you are gaining credits for. And if we think about a typical cloudy winter month, your solar panels would still produce some amount of electricity. They do not produce nothing during those months, but it is much less. You can see that's about a quarter of that bar during the sunny summer month. And so you need to draw a little bit more power from the grid as your consumption has stayed about the same. So rather than earning net metering credits, you're drawing power from the grid, and those net metering credits you earn are helping to offset those electricity costs. Net metering credits roll over from month to month, but reset each year on or around April 1st, depending on how your billing cycle is set up. Any unused credits by March 31st are donated to the grid, and this setup lets you save in summer and spend in the winter. It's important to note that any excess credits are donated. Will not receive a check from your utility paying you for those excess credits. They are just donated to the grid. And thanks to your bidirectional utility meter, imports and exports are tracked separately. If your net usage is negative, like negative 327 kilowatt hours, which would be the unit that your electricity is measured in, you earn that much in credit. Even with zero billable kilowatt hours, though, your bill wouldn't be $0.00. That's due to a base charge for staying connected to the grid plus some taxes and fees. And that usually works out between $15 and $20 per month. Still, compared to Oregon's average $70 per month bill, solar offers some major savings over time. And while grid electricity is cheaper in the Northwest, thanks to the amount of hydropower we have, rates still rise 2 to 6% per year. So as I said, solar is highly modular and customizable, and residential solar systems vary widely in size. System size is measured in a unit called kilowatts, and the average residential size in Oregon is around 8 kilowatts. But what determines your system size? By far, the biggest constraint is how much electricity you consume. This is because, as mentioned earlier, net metering credits do not roll over from year to year. That means to get the most value out of your system, your contractor will design it to meet but not exceed your estimated annual consumption. Your contractor will ask for your past electrical bills to determine your future needs. If you're expecting to install appliances or make any life changes that would significantly increase or decrease your expected consumption, make sure to let your contractor know. Other factors that can limit your system size are available roof space, budget, or limitations placed by an HOA or condo association or historic district. And give me one moment. I'm going to take a sip of water before I move on to the next slide. When comparing different solar quotes, you're going to want to know the differences in how much power your system is producing. Some simple metrics you can use to compare are how much watts of capacity are in your system, calculating the cost per watt of your system by dividing your total system price by total number of watts. So an example would be if you have an 8 kilowatt system, you would divide the cost to install your system by 8,000 watts. But you should also remember that that is not the only metric you should use. You want to be aware of the quality of your parts and not just get the cheapest panel possible to try and lower your cost per watt, as this could lead to you having issues in your system later down the line. What's the solar other metrics you can use to compare two different quotes are what's the solar production estimate for both peak summer and winter, and what is the estimated yearly solar production or the kilowatt hours per year. And you always want to check if there are any additional charges you should be aware of. Now, before we look at elements in a quote and example quotes for solar and storage, we'll recap the reasons why both solar and battery storage costs vary so widely. So I will be showing you some quotes with real numbers, but the quotes you might get may look really different, and that is due to a variety of factors, including the size of the system, whether or not you need to do any re-roofing, if you need to do any amount of structural analysis or structural reinforcement, if you require any electrical upgrades, and if you're installing solar and storage at the same time versus as two separate phases, how far you're installing storage from the electrical panel, if you're creating an essential loads panel for partial home backup, and how many batteries you are installing. In addition, availability of incentives can affect costs for both solar and storage, as those can change rapidly. For these reasons and more, it's impossible to quote the price of solar without having information about your site. So please keep this in mind while we go through the rest of the presentation. So now let's take a look at the elements in a quote. When reviewing your system quote, you should review what is included in your system price. Some items that should be included are all equipment, including but not limited to the panels themselves, inverters, monitoring system, and you always want to check if that monitoring system comes with any extra costs or subscription fees, racking equipment, which is how your solar panels are attached to your roof or the ground, and wiring. You also want to review the estimated installation time and labor costs. It is important to keep in mind that installation time can vary depending on permitting, material availability, and system design. And remember to review what warranties are included and what they cover. Consider if any maintenance plan is included in the quote and if there are costs to maintain your system. Remember that solar is low maintenance, but not no maintenance. When it comes to the technology in your system, a big price difference can come down to your system design and what brands are present in your system. A great topic to discuss with your solar installer is how the brands present in your system work together. This is also a great chance to read online reviews of brands and make sure you're getting the system you want. If you're installing the latest and newest technology, that can increase the cost. For example, solar roof tiles cost more than traditional solar panels. Both microinverters and inverters work great, but one may have been recommended over the other based on the needs of your system. Discuss why a string inverter or microinverter was chosen, and the price implications of such with your solar installer. You also want to know if they are recommending a string inverter, if they are also recommending a DC optimizer. Other things that might be in your quote and add-ons are add-ons like batteries, an EV charger, any meter or electrical upgrades, electrical panel upgrades, structural upgrades that might be needed in order to support the weight of panels, whether or not you need to re-roof in order to prepare for solar, and whether your contractor recommends you get a critter guard. When it comes to warranties for your solar system, you will have at least two warranties, one for the parts within the system, that would cover the panels, the inverter or microinverter, etc., and one from your solar installer covering the workmanship itself. Warranties are about 20 to 25 years for the panels and 10 to 15 years for inverters and batteries. This can vary depending on the system design and brands used because equipment warranties vary by equipment and manufacturer. Solar installers often provide warranties on their labor, services, and the install itself. Industry standard for workmanship warranty is 5 to 10 years and usually includes labor and equipment for a faulty installation. Working with a reputable contractor is important. Be sure to ask what the warranties are for your system and what is covered under the warranty. Consider what warranties and guarantees are included or excluded. And the Energy Trust Trade Ally programs provides at least a 2-year system warranty that covers all labor for any repairs resulting from defects in equipment or contractor workmanship. The Energy Trust Solar Within Reach Income Qualified program has a 7-year system workmanship warranty for eligible projects. Other items that might be included in your quote are add-ons such as batteries. I already read this. I apologize. I already went over other items that might be in your quote, but this is just an example of how the technology in your quote might be displayed on it. So you can see here that this quote includes a Solar Edge 10 kilowatt HD inverter and optimizers and monitoring, which is included, though the homeowner is responsible for providing a Wi-Fi network for the monitoring with a 12-year warranty. The solar panel modules are Canadian Solar in the Haiku model, and it has a 25-year material and performance warranty and guarantee. And then they also include the mounting system and EV charger. So this is just an example of what that could look like. As with any major financial decision, you please consult a professional before you make any choices or sign any contracts. And I am not a financial professional, so please make sound financial decisions. But with that being said, it's important to pay attention to the payment structure of your system. You want to know how much is the monthly payment and how much interest are you paying through your payment structure. Pay close attention to timelines for the payment, as there could be penalties for paying off a loan early, and that's definitely something you would want to be aware of. Because solar and battery storage entail a large upfront cost, many homeowners utilize financing. Some homeowners obtain a loan through a bank for which they have an existing relationship, but some banks do not provide loan products specifically tailored to solar. Your contractor may partner with a credit union or third-party broker that offers a package that is geared towards solar. And as with any major financial decision, as I said, please carefully assess your financing options and consult a professional if needed. So some solar installers offer financing options. As I said, if you have access to other financing through your bank or a credit union, you will want to compare all of your financing options and interest rates to ensure you are getting the best option. Some homeowners obtain a loan through a bank for which they have an existing relationship, as I said, but some banks may not be familiar with solar products and solar loans, and they may not be the best fit for you. When it comes to loans, we're going to talk about those more in a moment, but on leases, you want to check if there's an annual escalator. Does it put a loan on your home as you don't own the system? And similarly with power purchase agreements or PPAs, that is when you lease out the production of the system rather than the equipment. But these are currently pretty uncommon for home systems, so we are seeing them gained popularity recently due to the sunsetting of the federal solar tax credit. You also want to make sure you are taking advantage of all the incentives you possibly can. So those, if you're a resident and customer of the investor-owned utilities, you can definitely want to make sure you're accessing those energy trust incentives, and then you want to do your research to make sure you're taking advantage of any other incentives you may qualify for. Energy Trust of Oregon recently launched Smart E-Loans in partnership with Solar Trade Allies and Inclusive Property Capital, a 501c3 clean energy financing platform. ETO Smart E-Loans can be used to install solar plus storage plus battery storage paired with a qualifying solar system, an electric vehicle charger, and enabling upgrades or repairs up to 25% of the loan amount. There are some benefits of Smart E-Loans, including transparency. They have a clearly stated interest rate without any other hidden fees, no fee or prepayment penalties. It is unsecured, so there's no need to put up any collateral. A low FICO credit scores, as low as 580 are accepted. It has flexible terms of 5, 7, 10, 12, and up to 20 years. Rates are as low as 6.99%. As an easy application process. And Smart E, there's a skip pay option and flexibility if you contract them. The reach of the Smart E lending program is limited to those investor-owned utilities, so PGE and Pacific Power customers. If your local bank or credit union is not on the list of approved lenders, please talk to them to see if they have something else available to you. For a link to more information about the Smart E-Loans is already in the chat. So what you need to know about loans, some questions that you definitely want to make sure to ask are, what is the interest rate? Are there any dealer fees? If there's an early payoff penalty, whether the loan is fixed or variable? How many times can you rematurize the loan? If there are refinancing options, and who services the loan? And now that I've gone through that, let's actually see how you can save money. So as I mentioned, Energy Trust has a standard incentive for solar and storage. The incentive amount depends on the size of your system and your utility provider. The Energy Trust Standard Solar Incentive is a flat $2,500 for a solar system for both Portland General Electric and Pacific Power customers, and $400 per kilowatt hour up to $5,000 for PGE customers, and $320 per kilowatt hours up to $4,000 for storage for PAC Power customers. As the customer, the only thing you have to do in order to access these incentives is work with an Energy Trust Trade Ally contractor. The Trade Ally contractors will fill out all the paperwork for you in order to access these and make sure your system meets Energy Trust standards in order to receive these incentives. And you'll just see the discount for the incentives on your final bill. Beyond the Energy Trust standard incentive, Energy Trust also offers an income qualified incentive. This is very similar to how the standard incentive is structured, just at slightly higher amounts. And your eligibility for it is based on your annual household income. If you'd like more information about that, there's a link in the chat where you can scan the QR code on the screen. Now we're going to look at some example quotes. So here are two different examples of how the cost breakdown might look on your quote. Remember to look at the price per watt for your system. So we can see here that the system size for quote 1 is 9.88 kilowatts, and the second quote offers it at 10.92 kilowatts. So despite being very similar quotes, one contractor is suggesting a slightly larger system. So you'd want to know why that is and why they are suggesting that. As I've mentioned before, those net metering credits go over month to month, but not year to year. So you want to make sure that your electricity needs are meeting and not exceeding your expected electricity usage, as you don't want to be paying for extra panels than you need. So here are two different examples of how the cost breakdown might look on your quote. You can see the tax credits being offered, and I apologize, these quotes are a little bit old, so there's some incentives here that are no longer being offered, such as the federal tax credit that was sunsetted earlier this year. And you can see the cost before and after those incentives. So you can also see listed here the Energy Trust incentive. So that is just how that would appear if you were to access that by working with a Trade Ally contractor. And as a reminder, incentives can vary based on utility provider and state budget and can change frequently. So these are what the incentives were at the time that this presentation was last updated, but you can already see that they've already changed. So now here are two examples of the materials breakdown within a quote. So we can see one installer lists out the materials with the brands and images present, while the other one provides more details in text form, really letting you see the all the details laid out of the system. So it's kind of up to you which one works better for your brain and if you have a preference. You can see in this example that there were two different solar panels quoted, and those could both be great options, but definitely ask your contractor how they select the panels that they use and recommend. So on your quote, it'll also probably include some financing options. A financing option may be directly included, and that's great and likely due to the installer having a relationship with the financing company. So you can see here that the loan amount they're offering is $27,566 at a 15-year loan at an 8% interest rate with an initial monthly loan payment of $268. And the second installer didn't offer this, so they don't have a financing partner that they're working with. As I said, while your contractor may offer this, you do not have to. You can use that contractor and not accept their financing and get financing elsewhere. But we just wanted to include that as an example. So now we're going to talk about how to find a contractor. So once you've compared the hard practical items of your solar quotes, you can also think about things that come more down to your individual preferences. This includes things like the company culture, the size and structure, how long the contractor has been in business, And there's no wrong way to answer any of these questions. Some people prefer a small local company that is just getting started, while others prefer larger companies that work nationwide. It comes down to your individual preferences and desires. We have contractors of all sizes operating here in Oregon, so you'll be sure to find one that fits your needs and wants. As with any major financial decision, it's great to look up reviews, request references, and see if you can find any testimonials. You can always ask your contractor for references, and it's a great idea to do so, but we also recommend looking up reviews on Google, Yelp, or other online review sites that you're familiar with. In addition to what we've already talked about, you may also want your solar contractor to hold certain credentials. Credentials can be value-based, such as being a B Corp, or it can be about them meeting certain requirements and certifications, such as the Energy Trust of Oregon Trade Allies Program, and that one comes with the added benefit of saving you money. So, as I've been talking about a lot, I highly recommend working with the Energy Trust Trade Allies. You can use the custom bid form to connect with the Trade Allies, and they've already been rigorously qualified and vetted by Energy Trust of Oregon and can help save you money by offering those incentives. I know there's already some questions in the chat, so feel free to put more in, but otherwise I'm going to go ahead and open those and start the Q&A. So the first thing in the chat is someone recommends that Clean Energy Credit Union offers good rates. I'm not familiar with them, but that's certainly a great suggestion. I'll be sure to look into them. Thank you so much. Um, Another person asked if the PGE incentives are taxable. PGE incentives from my understanding, are based. PG does not currently have any incentives about installing solar. I would certainly talk to a tax lawyer in order to see if they are. I am not familiar with whether or not they are. And you also want to make sure, someone also put in the reminder that you want to make sure you are taking into account any life changes, such as getting an EV or um, updating any appliances when sizing your system. And that's certainly correct. You want to make sure you can predict any changes you know you have coming up. Now, I'm here to get your questions answered, so please put them into that Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. I'm here to get them answered, and while people are thinking of their questions, I'm going to also go ahead and launch the post-event survey.